Another week and another Battlefield 5 Tides of War assignment to complete. This time though, we get a brand new medium machine gun in the form of the M1922 MG. Sadly though, if you're watching this and haven't unlocked last week's assignment, it's too late now to get the final countdown headgear. You're just going to have to wait until it's available to unlock with company coin. We're now in the 4th week of lightning strikes, and so far we've been given the ZK383, the MAS 44 and then the final countdown headgear. So how do you unlock this week's weapon? Well, it's mostly centered around playing Frontlines this time around. In fact, that's the first step. Play a game of Frontlines. Pretty straightforward, I'm sure you'll agree. Then you have two branches. The top branch requires you to either arm or defuse a bomb in Frontlines and then get 15 kills with a self-loading rifle. And the self-loading rifles are the ZH-29, the Model 8, RSC and the newer Selbstlader 1906. The bottom branch instead wants you to capture 8 objectives and then kill 15 enemies with an MMG. This shouldn't be too hard considering you're trying to unlock an MMG. I'm going to assume that you might want to play with them, so getting 15 kills with one that's already available shouldn't be too much of a chore for you. The next step is a very easy one, but these ones can be frustrating if you keep missing it each time. It simply wants you to win a game of Frontlines. As it happens with these requirements though, you can often end up losing simple games constantly just when you need to win one. It can be annoying, but keep at it though, you'll get there. If you play the law of averages and join a few servers, it will happen after a couple of tries. The bonus objective is to kill 8 players while moving. It's easy. And then the objectives branch off one last time. The top route wants you to capture 3 objectives in a round of Frontlines. Again, pretty simple considering a round of Frontlines is very ebb and flow. And then the bottom branch wants you to kill 15 enemies with SMGs. The final objective is to score 25,000 points in Frontlines, and that's it, they're going to be yours. Overall though, this week's assignment isn't very difficult, and I don't think it's as time consuming as last week's either, that required you to play a lot of games of Breakthrough, which do tend to last a long time. But the question is though, is the grind worth it? How good is this new MMG? Well, I'd say it was pretty solid without being world beating. I like the beefy look of the thing and feel to it. According to the stats and the way that I've set it up, it's much more accurate and has better control compared to the MG42. But somehow I would still probably rather have the MG42. You've got the classic options when you specialise it, either opting for a better firing rate, taking it up to 900 RPM, or opting for more capacity. Now it already has 150 rounds as standard, which I think is pretty good, and that can go up to 250, which is a lot. The MMGs in general are an acquired taste though. Some players love them and the way that they force you to play, and others, well, simply hate them. I'm somewhere in the middle, I suppose. I've got to be in the right mood. When it comes to the weapon specs, you've got 2 options which I mentioned. I've opted for mostly the full left hand side. This gives you the recoil buffer which reduces vertical weapon recoil, and then the flashless propellant which will reduce the muzzle flash to make you at least a little harder to spot when firing. It's good in BF5. And this makes a big difference when you're not trying to get spotted by those pesky snipers. There's nothing worse than trying to mow down helpless enemies that you flanked only to be shot in the face by a sniper who has spotted you. The pain. And then the next spec is the extra firing rate. This takes you up to a firing rate of 900 rounds per minute, which is up from the default of 770. And I think that this firing rate makes a big difference too. The gun is fine with the default that it has, but that extra 100 or so rounds per minute does make it way more powerful. And I know that you can opt for the increase in capacity all the way up to 250, but because the default is already at 150, I think that that's more than enough. The last spec on the left side was increased damage to aircraft, which really doesn't seem that useful to me still. However, the spec on the right, much more appealing. It's the chrome lining which improves weapon overheating, and that's just far more useful with MMGs. How often do you really find yourself shooting at planes with an MMG in this game? I'd say that some players do this, but I don't think you need a spec dedicated to it. It just seems like you aren't going to use that anywhere near as much as you're going to use a spec that will improve your overheating, especially when you're firing off 150 bullets. I do still love the MG42, but I have to say that with the extra firing rate, this gun is actually a real contender for my new favourite support gun. The MG42 was definitely the best for me. It's probably not just my most used MMG, but one of my most used support weapons. I've got it set up with the 981 rounds per minute but 250 rounds in the mag. You can, however, have it set up to a whopping 1200 rounds per minute but only 50 rounds in the mag. So there's a real trade-off there. It is, however, laser accurate, and that's why I love it. On paper, it may not even be the best weapon, but I just love the feel of it and the sound. It's so damn iconic. And I thought I would take this time to give a few tips and tricks on MMGs, because just in general, when you should be using them and when you shouldn't. In a recent Battlefield patch, the bipod mechanics were massively improved, and if you do tend to play with the support class, you will have definitely noticed this. This gives you way more opportunities for kills when using the MMGs. Of course, you've got your standard window ledges, walls and whatnot that you can prop them up on, but after the update, the bipod detection is that much better that you'll find yourself being able to bipod up on things that you didn't think would work before the patch. Places like the bridge on Rotterdam are also way more reliable now with bipods too, so your movement angles are much improved. You can also bipod up on crouched teammates. Sounds unbelievable, well it kind of is. JJJU, a dev on the game, said in recent tweets that while he was rewriting the bipod code to improve it, the bipoding on teammates just happened to be a accident that appeared, but because players seem to like it, it's going to stay. Pretty hilarious, but also it's cool, so why not let it stay? It's an interesting tactic. Now with MMGs, you just need to try and play a bit more defensive and be in that mindset. Either set up in a place that you know enemies are going to push through, or move between cover, spotting potential places that you could use to bipod if you really needed to. With MMGs, you can of course still use your hipfire if you really need to, and it does get you out of trouble, but ideally you don't want to be using it too often as it's not very accurate. The one thing with MMGs and bipods in general though is that even when you're on your back, you are still technically in bipod mode, something that DICE are maybe looking at going forward, because they could be a bit OP here. So when you press the prone key, you can of course either be lying on your front or in a post on your back, but even when on your back, the game is still counting that as having the bipod deployed. So you can end up being in some pretty sneaky locations with the visibility in the game, and you've got the ability to zoom in and get the extra bipod accuracy too. I will say though, the bipod mechanics are hugely improved, but they're not perfect still. From time to time, you do still get situations where either your bipod doesn't come out when you expect it to, or it stops and you end up hip firing, and this can lead to some frustrating moments from time to time. But I suppose that that's the life you choose to take when you're playing with the machine guns. Overall, MMGs are an interesting meta in BF5. They force you to play very differently than with other classes, and they definitely take some getting used to. There's a different playstyle that you've got to adopt, and you really need to think about your movements a lot more, which I'm sure is something that DICE wanted. They've achieved that. The upside though is that when you're in the perfect position and you've got the bipod down, the MMGs do just shred enemies so fast. They're a fun weapon setup to use. If you've not tried them out, give them a shot. And in general, I do think that the medic class perhaps needs a few medium range weapons though, so hopefully there are more weapons for that class in the pipeline. Next week is actually the new Stug tank that we've been waiting for, and co-op, so for the first time in Tides of War, we'll actually be working to unlock a vehicle rather than a weapon or a cosmetic, something different at least. I just hope there isn't a shortage of tanks everywhere. We will see. Now, wrapping things up for today, Battlefield has got a new global community manager. Dan Mitre, who was in that role, announced last night that he is leaving that position. He's leaving EA and he's going to form a gaming company focused on esports. Now, Dan's been doing this job I think for the last 5 years, and he's someone that I've personally met at many events, hung out with, and he was absolutely top dude. So I wish him luck on his new ventures going forward. And replacing Dan will be Ben Walkie, and Ben has been the community manager on Star Wars Battlefront, and by all accounts, everything that I've seen, the interactions that I've had with him, he's doing a fantastic job with the Star Wars stuff, the Battlefront stuff over there. Obviously Battlefront 2 had a really terrible launch, but with a lot of the latest updates it feels like the community is back on board with the game, and I'm hoping that Ben will be able to step into the Battlefield role and give it his absolute best. So we should all welcome him into the community and wish him good luck. And that's all for today folks, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like. If you didn't, a dislike, subscribe for more, hit that bell, and I'll see you in the next one.